everyone, and welcome to the Ascend podcast. My name is Ann Greeny, and I'm really excited about our guest today. Jerry Brooner is an undeniable force in enterprise sales. For the past 3 years, he has been the president at Enable Software, helping companies throughout the supply chain take control of their rebates. Prior, he was CRO at Scout RFP, which sold to Workday, led North American revenue at Box, was SVP of large enterprise deals at SAP, and has been an advisor to countless startups. Jerry talks about everything from building a world-class sales team to aligning internal culture around common goals. This is a fun conversation because Jerry is not only a leader that any founder would be lucky to have, but he also is someone that works just as hard for his teammates that report into him as they do for him. Please enjoy my conversation with Jerry Brooner. Jerry, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So last year, when you spoke to our founders, one of the questions that came up was, what's your playbook? You've clearly done this time and time again and had a lot of success with that, both at early stage companies to larger enterprise companies. Your response kind of surprised everyone because you said there is no playbook. Can you elaborate on why?
Yeah, I remember that event very well. I really had a great time speaking to all those founders, and it's always such a pleasure to sit with Tim to hear stories about it. When people ask me that a lot, people say, what's your playbook? I've been very fortunate to be part of some very successful companies, the largest software companies in the world, SAP, Oracle, Workday, and startups that went out and had a couple great exits, an IPO at Dropbox, an acquisition at Scout. And people say, what's the playbook? Show me the playbook, like it's a secret formula or algorithm there anywhere. And what I shared with the founders is there's no playbook. And if someone tries to tell you they have a playbook, they're selling you snake oil, I promise. There is no playbook. Now, there are some fundamentals. There are fundamentals you can have that you apply to every position in every company. Right? A value-based sales methodology, right? A outbound metrics. You can't improve what you can't measure, right? A customer-focused sales cycle. All kinds of things you can do that are same playbook. But every company is different. Every product is different. Every customer is different. Every market segment is different. So trying to take a playbook from one company to another, or even from one market segment to another within your own company, is just silly. Basically.
Yeah, that's great. I totally agree. And so I want to jump over and talk a little bit about Enable. And, we talked, or I just gave kind of your bio and background. You could go just about anywhere. Why did you choose Enable?
That's very kind of you. I'm not sure I could go anywhere, but thank you very much for the compliment. There's a few things. There's a few things that I look for. I'm not a VC, so I'm not smart enough to go pick out a bunch of like best winners out of startups. I'm not that smart. I'll leave that to you at Sierra. But here's what I do. Here's what I do. I try to make it simple. The first thing I do is I look at the market segment the company's going after. Just go to the website and look at their customers. And if they have a bunch of other startups or a bunch of other things, but if they have companies like Schneider Electric, Home Depot, these big names, then you probably have something, right? So that's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is I try to explain it to my grandma. Now, my grandma raised 11 kids in Kansas. 11 kids. My father was one of 11. And if I can't explain it to her, like, that doesn't seem like an easy business problem to solve. I remember I explained Dropbox to her. Oh, on my phone, the pictures will be saved. Simple, simple. When I explained Enable to her, I was like, when you buy a lot of something, you want some money back? She's like, of course. If I buy in volume, I want some money back. That's Enable. So first I take those two. And then third, this is where Sierra comes in. Third, I look and I say, some of the top VC firms in the Valley. And there are lots of VCs out there, but only a couple of them consistently pick winners consistently. And I look at the board and the investors and who invested in the Series A and the C. It was Sierra and Menlo. And I was like, okay, you put those three together. And then I met the founder and the rest of the exec team. And I was like, this is something that I really wanted to jump into.
And so, how do you think about when you jump in? How do you think about building that culture, especially the sales culture?
Oh, I cheated a little. Just so we're, but you always have to think about building the culture and how you're going to make it and how you're going to shape it. Remember, I talked to you about the non-playbook, but you do some principles that are always the same, values, principles, one of those. It made it really a lot easier for me to enable, a lot easier, not easy. We still had to focus on it. A lot easier because a lot of the people that I worked with, I remember you met a couple of them when we were in the room at the Founders Dinner. And the founders were trying to poach them away from me. I remember that. But the same, fundamentals of basics have been carried with me. And some of the same people have come along. So it was a whole lot easier. If you have to start from scratch, it just takes longer. If you have to start from scratch and share with someone your go-to-market motion and your value-based sales methodology, then that makes it hard. But if you have some leaders that you've worked with before who've done this, when you bring them on, you immediately know what they care about and what they're focused on, and they know your system and your process and your go-to-market motion, and they can help teach that.
And when you're bringing on and looking for new candidates, new people to join your team, what are you telling them? Like, how are you convincing them to get excited about rebate management? And how are you looking at that? What does that profile look like for the candidates?
It's a very interesting question. And I think back to it when I started. So I was employee 63. I was number 63 here. And when I was calling people to come join or I was interviewing, and I'd be like, enable, ENABLE, rebate, REB. Yeah, I had to do a lot of explaining on what it was. So there was a little bit of selling involved there. There was a little bit of selling. Now, especially with the last announcement of the billion-dollar valuation and going, through 4 fundraising rounds in 3 years, most people know us. Most people have seen the name and they've seen the LinkedIn, so it's not as quiet. And then I have to look for a profile. And it's interesting to me, the profile you look for, because the profile you're looking for when you have 60 people and the profile you're looking for when you have 600 people is vastly different, more specialization. What I'm looking for in a profile is I'm looking for a career trajectory, right? I'm looking for someone that is constantly taking on a new challenge and either succeeding or having a challenge or having a tough time, but still doing it. And you can see it when you look at people on their resume. Did they stay at the exact same job at the same company for 3 years? I'm not saying to jump companies a lot. What I'm saying is when you're at a company and you've done something, especially at a startup, when it's dog years, when you've done something for a year, like you can see it on their resume and you see when you speak to them, did they go try something new? Did they move to a new department? Did they take on more responsibility? Did they move up? Did they move sideways and then up? There's a lot of things you can look for saying, but thrill seeker, challenge seeker, that's what a startup person is. I need someone like that.
What are the most critical skills and attributes, aside from just risk taking, when looking to hire sales professionals? Was there anything like throughout your career that surprised you that you look for now?
I don't know if it surprised me, but you can almost tell my hit ratio is really good. Within 5 minutes, I can start speaking with somebody. It's just a few basic questions. And I'll share a couple. And then, if you want more, I'm happy to share those too. There's no panacea for hiring great people. There's no like, just do this and you're going to find something. Okay. But having done it for many years and thousands of people, there are definitely some traits. There's definitely some traits. A first one sounds like a platitude, does, but they have to be customer focused. Now, everybody says this. Everybody says, oh, we're customer focused. That means I'm super customer focused. I answer the call every time they call me really quickly, or I know that the company color is green, like everyone says they're customer focused. I remember one of my best reps, and I knew she was a great rep. She was covering JetBlue. And I remember I went to the first prep meeting with her and she told me what their most profitable routes were, what their gas hedges were, and that they were opening. The CEO had bonus tied to opening a route from JFK to the UK. That's knowing your customer, knowing the margin lines, knowing who reported to who, knowing what their goals were, how the CEO is bonus. That is knowing your customer, right? Because that's how you get to help them. So that's number one. Number one is knowing your customer. Number two, and this sounds easy as well, being committed. Being committed. But it's not that easy. Being committed is just not working hard. Most successful people do work hard. Unless you're smart enough to write the Google algorithm, which I'm not, but some people are smart enough to do that. Being committed. And being committed means that not only do you work hard, but you know you're going to get through something, right? Ups and downs in a career, ups and downs in a company. Things are going well, they're not going well, because now. But if you're actually committed, you know, no matter what happens, I'm going to look through it, I'm going to find a solution. I'm going to be committed. I'm going to work through it until I can find a solution. So if you look at those two things, it's pretty easy to see, you know, who can be successful. And it's actually rather easy to test for. It's really rather easy to interview for if you think of it that way and try to work backwards.
Are there any strategies that you use to motivate and retain your top performing sales talent?
There are a couple key strategies that I think any leader, whether you're salespeople, or any other part of a revenue team or a company, right? If you're a leader, the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure you know your team. Now, this is like knowing your customer. Anyone can say, oh, look, I looked in the HR system. This is their birthday. Oh, I remember they went to college here. Or, hey, they live in this city, so maybe they're a fan of that local team. You have to know their short and long-term career goals. And asking them once isn't going to give you the answer. You have to ask 5 or 6 different times in different ways. You have to know personal and professional, right? You have to understand how they operate. What's the best way for them? What's the best position for them to be successful? How do they like to be motivated? How do they like to operate? Do they like to call a lot? They need to talk through things. Do they like to go away and wait? So you have to know all that about your team. And that's hard when you have teams start to get big. But if you start, I tell everyone, everybody will tell you exactly what they want if you listen. I promise. You talk to somebody long enough and you just listen to what they say, they'll tell you exactly what they want or what they feel, but you've got to pay attention. You got to not be waiting to answer. Got to pay attention. All right. So number one, you got to really know your team. Number two, you have to make sure, I think for my top performers, I need to make sure they never ask for anything. Now, I look at my top performers, and if you know them, you know what they want to do, you bring them opportunities. You say, hey, I know you want to do this. I'll give you an example. I made a commitment to a rep on my team. She wanted to go move to the UK, and we were going through Dropbox at the time through the IPO. And we went through the IPO, and then she went to another job within the company before it. But come to Enable, guess who I called and moved to the UK 6 years later for the same job? But I knew it. I knew she wanted it. And I knew that was her career goal. And it gave her great management experience, gave her great international experience. But you have to know what your team wants. You have to know what you want, and then you have to give them that opportunity. She never asked for anything. The top performers will never ask, right? You need to be able to give them, professional success, personal success, and understand what opportunities and challenges that'll keep them interested, because they'll get bored real quick. Top performers always get bored because they're really good at jobs and they do their job and they're like, now I've done well. So those two things are a couple key things that most people I see, really, if someone comes to you and they say someone just left the company, a top performer, that's exactly on the manager, because top performers leave for bigger roles, better opportunities, but you can give them that internally.
So similar topic that we hear a lot in sales or anywhere on the revenue team is, how do you avoid sales burnout? Is there anything that you can do to be proactive for your team? Because you've got big goals, and as you're doing with Enable, you're hitting quarter after quarter, and that is a total grind. How do you avoid them from getting burnt out, or is it avoidable?
Burnout's an interesting topic. Everyone's experienced it in their life. And you're right, especially when you're at a high growth startup like Enable, and some of the top performers on my team who are going really hard. Burnout, you have to start back at the beginning. right? Remember that know your employee person, just like your customer. Okay, so everyone's burnout the rest of the week is going to be a little bit different, right? And they're not going to tell you. And if you're a top performer, you're always going upright or top right, upright. So they just keep going, keep going. One, you have to understand what causes the burnout. What causes burnout for one person probably won't cause burnout for another person. Now, if you're worried about an employee in the revenue team being burnt out by going on customer visits, then maybe that person doesn't belong in sales or different role, right? So first, find the role, know the person, and find out what the burnout is. Most top performers, most people I've seen in the organization who came to burnout, it is burnout from the rest of their job. It won't be the main thing in their job. It's the administration, right? Or doing work that is unrelated to their goals or not understanding the work. So the burnout comes from not putting the person in the best position to succeed, because that's when they run out, because they're running and spinning their wheels on a job versus clearly laying out, here's what your goals are, here's how you achieve your goals, and then letting them run.
Now, in addition to your main job, you also have advised a lot of early stage companies, some of Sierra's as well. And what's some of the common pitfalls in the early stage, like those first early years that you see founders or even that first sales leader make? Is there anything that you see that just continues to happen that you can, give some advice on to avoid?
For founders out there, I have one message. Number one, bless you. Like, I would never have the metal to be a founder. I think the world of founders, someone who takes it all and puts it on the line for their company. So I will always return a message from a founder. If there's a founder out there that has a question, send it to me. I promise you'll get a response, because I admire founders. I think founders make a lot of very typical errors that I see over and over again from the very beginning. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard. First of all, what I see from founders is founders fall in love with their product. And they should. That's why they built a company. But the problem becomes when the market doesn't want it, or it doesn't want it in that shape. They can't hold on too tight and not change from their product. The market will tell them. The market will tell you if your product is good, if your product is worth a lot of money or a little money, or your product needs to change. And there are too many times that I see founders holding on to product or a product attributes without being able to change. So you got to look to change. Number two, I think founders a lot of times operate in I'm 0 to 1 or 0 to 2 million stage. When you get to about 2 million, 1.5 million, you need to start handing it over to people with processes to scale. And I see founders do it too much. Oh, I don't want to spend the money on hiring this expensive person, or I don't want to spend the money to hire this. I got to 1 million. Let me get to 3 million or 4 million. And they will. All great founders will still get that high. But going from 1 million to 3 million or 3 million to 11 million are different worlds. Because now you're starting to talk about capacity and people and operations and marketing and demand gen and all this stuff. So if there are two things for founders, I would say, make sure you listen to the market on your product. And then number two, start thinking about your scale, about the 1 million mark. At the 1 million mark, the market wants your product. Now you got to figure out how to get in the hands of everybody.
What's one thing you wish that founders knew about sales?
I think founders are great salespeople. I think founders are unbelievable salespeople, right? They manage to get money from people like you. They go to them and say, I have this idea or this product. I may or may not have a customer, may or may not. I may or may not even have a product, but give me $1 million or give me $5 million. And then, I might give it back to you in 10 years. That is a great sales job. You get someone to do that. That is a great sales job. What I would share with founders is it's an art and a science. And you have to have both. When you're a founder, you're normally doing the art. Right? Here's our vision, here's our picture, here's what we're going to build, here's what we're going to do for you. And that's all part of it. It's all part of it. But that's only half. You have to do the science. the science of it. There are stages in a sales cycle, right? Things need to happen. There are people you need to talk to. There's budgeting, there's PO, there's security, there's a formula and a science that goes into it. There's an ROI model. There's the number of touches before a contact comes back to you, number of touches within your organization. So there has to be an art and a science. Founders are normally great at the art. It's the science they need structure and help on.
So I'm going to take a question from last year when you were speaking to our founders, because again, I really appreciated your response. And this is coming from, a recovering marketer myself. How do you get sales and marketing to get along?
What if I give you, that's funny. What if I give you a different answer than I said last year?
Depends how different.
What did I say last year? I'll test your memory.
Yeah, last year you said you incentivize marketing similar to how you incentivize sales, or you should, and that marketing should be held to that same pipeline number. And that was the unifying piece that I think a lot of founders still miss today, that marketing's off in this silo and sales is over here and CS is over here, and everyone's marching in a similar direction, but the KPIs are all different. And so you end up just having them clash back and forth with each other. And so as I'm talking to founders on a regular basis, these are some of the messages that I'm trying to get across. And I remember you were saying, like, I don't know what your structure is for doing it, and maybe it's different every time, but it's so important. I think everyone in the room was like, maybe some of the marketers got a little uneasy, some of the salespeople got a little uneasy, but it's a challenging question. And I'd love to just, how do you handle it at Enable? Or is it something that's just kind of inevitably always going to be challenging in the startup world?
Probably a little bit of all the above. A little bit of all the above, but let me share very specific. I feel this way about the entire company, by the way. Every department within the company. I'm a firm believer. I think Tim told me this. I think Tim told me this. Smart guy. You either make something or you sell something. You make something or you sell something, right? At a company, you're trying to sell something, you're trying to make something, sell it. And if your job isn't one of those two directly, I promise you it is indirectly. You're trying to help somebody make something or you're trying to help somebody sell something. There is no in between. So you just have to make sure that people understand that and their goals are aligned to that. Compensation drives behavior. Now, I've seen it. And I've seen it at big companies and small companies. Let's go back to marketing. They pay them on marketing touches or marketing influence or the number of events. All that are inputs. Those are inputs. That's not the output you're looking for. What's the output you're looking for? Close revenue. Like, it doesn't matter how many events, how many web touches, how many MQLs, SQLs, AQLs, whatever QL. None of that matters unless you get to close revenue, right? So if you incent a marketing team on events, there are going to be a whole bunch of events, but they might be terrible. Or they might be good. But again, that's an input. That's input. You're looking for the output, which is close revenue. So you want marketing team and the sales team thinking, I need to find a lead that will turn into an opportunity that will close. How do I get a lead that will turn into an opportunity that will close? And then you need to get the sales team, who's already, because they're paid on close, thinking, how do I go make sure I get the right opportunity? So you have to incent them to go the other way too. So they both can have the same on, let's find the right opportunity, right? Let's create the right opportunity together, and then let's close it. But if you're incenting them on different things or measuring them on different things, again, certain things are inputs, right? Number of leads is an input. You're just looking for an output. You want the end result, which is closed revenue. And you can tie anything from marketing, anything from customer success, and anything from sales back to closed revenue. And if you can't tie it, then stop doing that.
One more question kind of in that line. What's one of the most underrated roles in this, let's say, the whole revenue org? Are there any roles that, maybe typical founders aren't thinking that they need to prioritize that you rely on regularly?
I will give you three because I can't tell you which one. But when I came to Enable, there were 3 offer letters that went out the same day I got mine. Same day. And there were 3 very specific roles and people in those roles. Okay. The first one, I tell every founder this, and none of them believe me. I tell every first-time VP of sales this. I tell every first-time CRO I meet this, and none of them still believe me because I see how greatly understaffed it is. Anyway, sales operations. Now, people think of sales operations and they go, who's going to do my deal desk, or who's gonna like make my CRM look pretty or dashboards? No, 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 no. That's part of it. Do you want to know how to analyze territories, how to increase quotas or decrease quotas, how to understand, where the top accounts are, or where the best personas are worth hitting? That's sales operations. That's your secret sauce. All right. If I was a first-time VP, back when I was, first thing I would do is go to sales ops and make sure I was a really competent person. Really, really competent. Now, most of the time, like when I went to this company to do some advisory work the other day, I said, tell me about your sales operation. Let me meet the person. And they introduced me to the person, and the person ran the BDR team, was 4 years out of college. Nothing wrong with that, but they ran sales ops. Probably a little bit of struggle. So sales ops. That's number one. Number two, I would say sales enablement. Sales enablement. It's impossible. You can do a top-down capacity model. You can do a bottoms-up leads to close revenue. You can do all that. If you can't train someone on what to do and how to do it and when to do it, then you've wasted money. I see founders and companies spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands hiring people, recruiting, finding them, bringing them on. And then when they get there, I remember the last company I went to, tell me about your sales enablement. And they said, oh, here it is. And it was like a Google sheet with 4 lines on it. And one was like, the website of the company. So if you're trying to trust somebody to scale, you need to make sure sales, and it's just not ongoing, right? It's not just one time. It's ongoing. But once you train them, 3 months later, where are they at? What are they doing? What are they certifying on? 6 months later, are they building pipeline? Do they understand how to build pipeline? Do they understand how to progress the sales cycle? So sales enablement. And the third and final one, probably the closest to my heart, is value consulting, value engineering, business case consulting. Everything in the world, especially today is a number. Especially everything is getting scrutinized. So you need to have a number on everything. And everything does have a number. And the amount of time you're spending right now, there's a number on this. There's a number, right? Tim's probably like, what is she doing for my bottom line? There's a number on this for you. Everyone, time has a number. Because right now you need to make sure that your project has a number to it, both a hard cost and a soft cost. How much hard dollars am I going to get to the bottom line, and how much time savings am I have? If you just have something with time savings, but you have to do that throughout the sales process. So I would say those 3 areas are top hires.
When you think about sales enablement, at what stage does that need to come in? Because I've definitely seen, I think in the really early stage, which I work with a lot of our, seed and A stage portfolio companies, they're ready to go hire agencies or, BDRs or BDR teams, and they don't really have a playbook. So it's kind of like, how can you train these people without it? Is it that early, or is it kind of founder needs to do it till a certain point and then you plug in sales enablement later down the road?
I would work with a founder and ask him, what's your growth? Right. Most founders, at least in the Sierra portfolio, are doubling year over year, at least doubling 2-3x. So if you're at 2 million and you're doubling, you plan to go to 4, then 8. Think about the amount of people, BDR, sales reps, solution consultants, technical experts, industry experts that you need to train and hire. And you're right. People spend tens of thousands of dollars and lots of times going and hiring all these people. And then they show up on the first day and they're like, well, how do I talk to them about my company, my industry, my persona, my marketplace? How do I tell them about our sales process? How do I tell them about, engaging with the right features? So I would say it depends on your growth, but definitely by 3 million, maybe 2.5 million, because you're building not for that year, but for the next year and the year after.
So Jerry, how do you prioritize and balance short-term sales goals with the long-term business objectives? I know your team on the revenue side has a lot of pressure to hit those goals quarter after quarter, and then you have such a bigger vision for Enable as a whole.
It's an age-old question, right? Short term versus long term. Every quarter is the most important quarter, and it will be for the rest of the time. Every quarter you're in is the most important quarter. But if you don't set yourself up for next year, and when you get to that point, you're going to have a bad quarter. So any manager can do a short term, right? One of our other board members, Dan, shared with me, any manager can do short term. A really great leader can do the short term while planning for the long term, because you need to do both. You need to be able to do both. How we do it here at Enable, there's lots of different ways, I'm sure, and the revenue is one way, but we spend time. Our CEO is very big on spending time, Andrew, on it. We will do offsites. We will take time out of calendars, and we'll say, okay, where are we going to be in 3 years? Where are we going to be in 5 years? What are the metrics? This is how detailed he is. What are the metrics of that company in 3 years? Where are our metrics now, and how are we getting to those? And that's everything from efficiency, CAC, revenue growth, employee productivity, revenue per employee. So he's well ahead of us. So for me, it makes it really easy because there's a corporate level, and then I have to bring it back down to the revenue piece of it and understand how I move to that. So I get an easy card because of my CEO.
Yeah, Andrew, one of the things we talk about a lot with great founders, and Andrew's name comes up, is clarity of thought. And just knowing, really being able to kind of pull back and see that long-term vision, but still be able to execute quarter on quarter. I think that's one of the really phenomenal things about Enable, that your team has been able to do that, and like hitting those numbers, but also have this much grander vision that you're working towards. What advice would you give revenue leaders that are just kind of starting out, or aspiring revenue leaders, people who are looking to kind of take on that first leadership role in sales?
My first comment to any of them, and any leader in any function, whether it be marketing, I know you're a recovering marketing person, or product or engineering, whatever it is, if you don't get up and are excited about the tough times and the challenges you have, and the joy, the celebration, then maybe you're not in the right role. And that's okay. I had a lot of roles that I was, one, really bad and terrible at, but number two, I didn't enjoy. Right? I was in marketing for a year. I was terrible at it, and I didn't enjoy it very much. But once I got to a role that I did, I would say, find that moment and find that role, and enjoy it, and understand that you're never going to have all the answers. Ask a lot of questions, ask a lot of people for help, and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, one of I think the misconceptions that a lot of people are told early on is go find like an industry or something that, you really are passionate about. And I think it's so much more about the role. Like, I love marketing at the end of the day. And I was surprised throughout my career that the times that I enjoyed it the most, I was selling really boring products like CRMs and things that I wasn't, I'm an athlete, so I wasn't out there, marketing Nike. I was marketing a CRM product that, felt like a big spreadsheet. So yeah, I think it's finding those roles where just the key functions, and that how you use your brain every day really does excite you. And then on that note, so if you didn't have a career in tech or sales, what would you be doing?
I'd be a history professor.
Oh,
probably high school.
Nice.
And it would be centered around World War II, the American Revolution area, or the Civil War. I'm a history buff, so I like reading a lot of books. I would be a history professor.
Oh, that's great.
It's a little like sales. You're educating the market.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a number of parallels there. And I think high school students sometimes often act a lot like salespeople too. Oh, I love, that's the marketer coming out of me.
Yes.
No, I love it.
Our marketing leader, Sean, would probably agree with you.
To end it, are there any books that you recommend for leaders or for founders that are thinking about sales or thinking about scaling businesses? Is there anything that you've read throughout your career that really like made an impact on you?
I would first say any book, read. Always, I read now today, every day. I mark it out on my calendar and I take time out of it. So always read and educate yourself. One that sticks out to me that I've used and read several times, I just gave it to everybody at our President's Club, is The Score Will Take Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. The score will take care of itself. Besides being an avid 49er fan, the score, it's not a football book, by the way. It's a business book. And he always talked about control the inputs and the score will take care of itself. Control the inputs. Control what you do each day, control how you practice, control how your team thinks, control how you train. He trained everyone in the entire company, even the receptionist at the front of the 49ers building. He went through the same training that the football players, coaches, those were inputs. He could control inputs. And then he said, once you control inputs, the score will take care of itself. Don't worry about that.
I love it. That's such a great way to end this. And Jerry, if there's if founders want to get a hold of you, what is the best way or to do that?
On LinkedIn, Jerry Brooner, Brooner, or to come to Sierra and ask you.
That's always a good one. Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
And had a great time. Thank you very much for having me.